Welcome back to another episode of Conversate with Akeem D. Earl. And I'm here with Robert Newman. I don't know which one you go by. Which one do you like better? Which one do you like the most?
So my given name is Robert Newman.
Yes.
My trouble name is Robert Newman. So when I hear Robert, you get my attention, but I'm generally referred to as Bob.
Man, got you. So we're going to do Bob, so because you're not in no trouble.
If I do something wrong and you say Robert, trust me,
then
I will know I did something wrong, and I will pause and you will get my attention.
Man, that's so good. That's great. So the official Conversate opening question is, if I was not an attorney, I would be a what?
And I can control what that is.
Yes.
Okay.
You have all control over it.
I'd be an executive chef.
Ooh. Why?
I love cooking. And not for I love the experience of cooking, but more important, I love to see people enjoy what I've done. And to take their tastes and take what their interests are, put it together and sit it down. I don't even put a plate in front of me. I just kind of sit and watch and just see how they enjoy. I mean, I just love cooking. It allows absolute creativity. There are no real boundaries when you're cooking. So yeah, I'd be a chef.
Man, that's real. What's the go-to dish? What's the main Bob Newman dish?
Well, yeah, it depends if you talk to my wife. My wife will just say it's when I make her steak and lobster. But like, for example, I just made some oxtail. So, you know, I kind of run the go-to. Wow. What would the go-to be? I don't know if I have a go-to. I mean, there are things that I make. I mean, I bake bread. The gambit, semolina, rye, sourdough, the whole 9 yards there.
Man.
And I also bake. I mean, I actually do desserts as well. And the regular dishes, it's
the full gambit.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. It's funny. I don't do Asian cuisine, and so I probably, if you ask me, I've messed around a little bit of French. Definitely could do, Caribbean, being my Jamaican background,
right?
And the whole everything in between, and Italian. I do Italian as well.
Nice. So speaking of your Jamaican background, did your mom teach you how to cook? Grandmother teach you how to cook? Like, where did the cooking skills come from?
It came from my mother. My mother had this is. I hope this is. I don't know what rating this podcast is, but I'm gonna put it out there for truth.
It's all good. It's all good.
My mother had 3 sons has 3 sons and 1 daughter. And I grew up with my dad also. But her philosophy was her sons are going to need a woman for only one thing. And so we learned how to iron, we learned how to clean, we learned how to sew, we learned how to cook, we learned how to bake. We learned, not just just clean ourselves, but clean the house, clean the house.
Yep.
The whole 9 yards. So if I'm living by myself, I can function. I'm not gonna starve. I'm not gonna live in a pigsty. My bath. You come over my house, my bathroom will be clean. My house will be clean. So I learned all that from my mom. So the cooking part initiated from her, and then so I knew the basics of how to cook. But then a couple of years ago, it's more than a couple of years ago, probably 20 years ago, I was between jobs, and this is kind of date some folks. It's when the Food Network was just starting. And I'm watching all the shows because I'm sitting home doing nothing at that point. And I would literally watch some recipe, get up, go to the store, get the ingredients, and then make them. When I went back to work, my daughters were not happy.
No more food.
Because as they remember, they ate like princesses, kings, and queens during that period of time. But yeah, that's kind of when it really got taken to another level during that period of time.
Got you. And you was making it for them that you had to wait and see what their rating was. You had to make sure you wanted to know what the.
And my kids kind of grew up in the same kind of household I did. It wasn't a restaurant. You ate what you got served.
Yep.
Now you could tell me you didn't like it or not, but you're gonna eat what's
finish
there.
The plate.
If you don't, then you're going to bed hungry.
Yeah.
It's not an option which says, well, I don't like vegetables. Well, I really didn't ask you if you like vegetables.
It's on the plate. I took the time to make it.
Right, that you're gonna eat it. So
Man, got you. So you said you're originally from Jamaica, right?
yeah, I was born in Jamaica, West Indies. Came here in '69. And we first came to Brooklyn, like most Jamaicans did back then.
My parents, that's my same parents story. Yeah.
Toronto, or Brooklyn.
Yep.
And then you scattered from there.
Exactly.
So we first came to Brooklyn, lived right off Eastern Parkway, and then moved to the projects in the Bronx. And so I grew up in the Bronx,
nice.
in Northeast Bronx, right, pretty much at the border of Yonkers and Westchester.
Got you. What age did you come? When did you come over?
Was that 6? 5, 6? And then I went, and so I stayed in Brooklyn for a year, and then it was 7 when we moved to the Bronx.
Do you have any like vivid memories from Jamaica?
Absolutely.
Those early years.
So it's interesting. Yes. One of my most vivid memories is a tragic one. We had chickens, and people probably know, if you're from Jamaica, you probably know where this is going. I was a young child, and they chopped the head off, twisted and chopped the head off the chicken, and just put the chicken down, and it kept running around.
Oh no! So really running like with the chicken with your head cut off.
The phrase chicken running with our chicken head with your cut off.
First head.
Right, and I didn't sleep by myself for about 2 weeks. Wow. That was serious. That was serious trauma.
Hilarious.
And then of course I remember there was a time, my mother said something about me not being able to have any butter on bread. I used to like having butter on my bread. And so I just took my bread and went next, because the way our house was, it was pretty much 2 apartments in one house on the same level. So I just went out one way and went to my grandmother's house and asked her for butter on the bread. But I didn't eat it there. I was bold and brazen enough to take it back to my mother and say, "See, I got my butter." And then we used to go back until my grandmother passed away in the 90s. I went back pretty regularly, and so there's other experiences from that. And I'll often quote things or say things that my grandmother taught me. My most common one is, Bobby, you will learn that common sense is not all that common. That's something that has stuck with me for a very, very long time.
And I'm sure you've seen a lot of that in the legal field, sadly.
Sadly, yes. Yes. Yeah, and just in life alone, but definitely.
Man, that's real. And so how was it being in Brooklyn? Was it a culture shock when you came over? Like, was it a big adjustment to make, or you were just a kid, you just didn't know?
That part I don't remember it that much. I definitely know. So from a cultural standpoint, I can't say I remember that, because when you're at that age, you stay inside the gates. Right. It's not like you're running around doing stuff on your own. But what I do know is that when I got to the most memorable thing that happened to me in Brooklyn was, I later found out there was a young lady across the street, and I decided to cross the street to go talk to her. I think at that point, I was 6 years old, and I got hit by a car.
Man. Yeah, but I was like, I told you not to go.
So my wife has long said, my wife and my mother said, women always get you in trouble, Bob.
Oh man,
facts. But I've settled down with a good one right now.
Good.
But yeah, so, and then from there we moved to the Bronx, and there, it being the projects, there were 14-story buildings and 3-story buildings. I lived in the first floor of a 3-story building, but it was a quad, a cluster of 4 buildings. And where my parents were, windows on 3 sides. So I could be anywhere within that quad, and my folks still be able to see me. And that was kind of the rule. So I can go out at a very young age. In fact, I was just talking to my daughter this morning, where I said, when I left the house in the morning, I did not go back until I had to, till sundown. It was just being outside. Probably, and sometimes because I probably got in trouble for something, and maybe if I stayed outside long enough, they'd forget about it, or they wouldn't be as angry.
Right.
But yeah, that was it wasn't a culture shock, but it was the culture I grew up in, because we were able to go outside and do things. There were all other kids there. In a former career, I would refer to it as grazing. There were opportunities for us to graze. There was open green space. We could go out. I mean, if you take some kids and leave them to their own devices and give them some green spaces and give them any ball,
they'll
any
make
ball
something happen.
Or something, they'll find ways of keeping themselves occupied. But what then began to happen is they began to put structural things in. They began to asphalt things and say, okay, you will play this kind of game, or you will play this kind. Well, that's not what we wanted to do. So that started to happen as I got older. But when I was younger, we would yell at each other's window, come on down. It didn't matter what. There was some game that we were playing or something we were doing, hanging, getting our hair braided. It's hard for me to talk about getting hair.
I need to see some pictures of this one.
But yeah, I mean, that was the thing. And again, when you grow up in that environment, you don't realize that you are in the projects, or that you're poor. The black and white aisle in the AMP is just where you went. And later on in life, you realize, because people talk about the independence card now. I know when that first came out, because they said there was a stigma on it. You know, in the supermarket, you know, you would have to separate items that the food stamps could pay for and that you had to have cash for. Didn't realize that. Wow. The black and white aisle, you know, folks who grew up in my generation, when they talk about the black and white aisle, there wasn't Frosted Flakes with Tony the Tiger on them. It was just a white box with black letters that saying Frosted Flakes. You know, there wasn't Del Monte and the green thing. It was a white pan with black letters on it saying green beans.
Dang.
And
they get straight to the point. Ain't no branding, no marketing.
Right. So it was clear to everybody, you know, that you were poor. But to me, it didn't matter. I was eating. My parents were doing what they needed to do to feed me. And all of us in the community were shopping the same way. So there was no real stigma there. It wasn't until I became much older in life that I realized what my parents managed to do with their circumstances, get their kids through high school, into college. A couple of us got professional degrees. It wasn't until later on in life that I really appreciated everything that they did. So, you know, that's probably not what you were asking, but that's
that's amazing.
That part of it.
You know, it's because my parents have a similar story, because my parents are also from Jamaica, and their path was to Brooklyn also. And when they came to Brooklyn, they worked in a laundromat and they made it work. Even though they had education, stuff like that, they had to start from zero. What did your parents do? What were your parents doing when they came to
So my parents didn't have much education when they came to this country. My dad didn't get his GED until he came here. But I've said this 1,000 times, if I've said it one time, he is the smartest man I have ever known. You know, go back to that common sense piece. My dad can figure it out. My dad will work to figure it out. It may not be academically correct, but it will be functionally right. He will get it done. He will figure out how to get it done. My mom had a high school degree when she came here. We had a race to graduate. So I got my I was the first one to ever. Let me correct this. My mother went to 12th grade, but she never actually officially graduated from high school. So technically, I was the first person in our entire generation, both sides of the family, to ever graduate from high school. Then the first one to graduate from college. My mother then went and she got her college degree, and then there was a race for her master's.
Who get it first?
I beat her on that one also. but you know, so she got her education here. Dad did a lot of things. He was in maintenance for a long time. As one of his side hustles, he drove a gypsy cab, all while still working a job at the Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx. So that was his full-time job, but he had multiple jobs. My dad, probably until his 60s, never had just one job. He always, you know, there's this stereotype of Jamaicans always having multiple jobs. My dad was it. My dad was it. He would always be able to figure out, find a way, make a way, and didn't have the pride. Had no pride about it, or he was just a humble man saying, "I got to take care of my family." My mother, she started out. She also worked in the hospital, and she ended up becoming a nurse manager, not a nurse manager, a unit manager at Montefiore Hospital. And so when those unions would go on strike, 1199, it was always interesting seeing management and union in the same household. But it was like, okay, we got to eat. So wife, you go do your job.
Yeah.
And then after that, after she got her degree, she became a counselor for a drug addiction counselor.
Nice.
And ran her own center in the Bronx. And then they eventually retired, and they retired down to Florida.
Wow.
To where they both got jobs down there. And just recently, probably within the last 5 years, they both said, okay, that's enough.
I'm done.
And they're just relaxing.
Oh, that's amazing, man. Like, so growing up in that environment, what options or what did you see in terms of what you wanted to be when you grew up? Being in the Bronx, being in those spaces, what was in your mind of like what you wanted to do once you got to high school or college? Or like, was there anything like that? I want to be this when I grow up or anything?
I can honestly say that my goal at that age was to not end up at the Triangle. Now, there are a handful of people at my law school who know about this story because my essay was called "And the Triangle is Still There." Just above our quad was this triangle with benches and those concrete chess and checker tables. And remember at that time also it was coming out of Vietnam, and a lot of people went and came back and they had addiction problems or they had other issues. And you would see a pattern of folks going to school, graduating, but then trying to leave and then come back, and they'd end up in a triangle with some issue or some problems. And so I think it was always, when I was younger, was to not end up at that triangle. I didn't see it as cool. I just saw it as, wait, that's something about that doesn't make sense. And then when I was 14, 15 years old, I was approached or recruited or drafted, I don't know, whatever term you want to use. There's a program called the Archbishop Leadership Project that was started by Cardinal Cook in the 60s, in the late 60s. And the idea was it's kind of taking a page out of W. Du Bois' book of The Talented 10. It would find young men who had promise. And what the purpose was to try to bring them in, educate them, and change the trajectory of their future. And so we read all sorts of books. We were reading, Lerone Bennett's, Lerone Bennett, back then when he wrote Before the Mayflower. I'm blanking on what his changed his name to. Paul Freire, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Just so many different books that we had to read about our history, our culture, and go to class and write stories on them. Do these retreats where you'd be sitting down in a group watching TV or doing something. And he says, "Okay, you have to get up 10 minutes, give a speech on this topic to your peers." And so you got 10 minutes to prepare for it, and you're standing up there doing public speaking in front of your peers who are going to critique your topic and what you're talking about.
Wow.
One topic
at 14, 15 years old as a teenager.
Yeah, it was. I think I started when I was 16. So I was recruited, and then you had the interview process. And so 16, I think we started as a junior in high school. And that's when I really began to see there's something else out there. Because when you're in the projects, you don't have a whole lot of role models other than people who are not in jail, who are not doing drugs, which my dad was one of them. Freddie Graves was another one. Fred Oglesby was another one. Fred Oglesby's a lot older, closer to my age, but Freddie Graves was a dad, my dad, of course. So those were your role models. But for career purposes, you didn't see anything. You also didn't want to get arrested. But this is what I was going to tell you that Ted Shaw was one of my mentors in the ALP program. Now, for folks who don't know Teddy Shaw, at the time, I did not realize how significant he was. He was just a pain in my neck, riding me hard. But he was the general counsel for NAACP Legal Defense Fund. He worked on so many of the desegregation cases around the country. He is probably one of the most revered and recognized brothers around. But when I'm growing up, he's just this redhead, light-skinned guy who's just teaching me stuff and getting on my case. but I come to find out he's a lawyer, and I'm like, this is brilliant. I mean, this is just brilliance right here. Pete Saunders, another one who I went to Cardinal Spellman High School, which is why my dad had to keep working a bunch of different jobs. And Pete Saunders was an alumni from there. And by the way, just for anybody who's listening on this, Justice Sotomayor is an alumni of Cardinal Spellman High School.
Wow, okay.
He went to Cardinal Spellman High School. A little bit before me, but you know.
Yeah, no, that's real. That's dope.
But yeah, she went there. And so when I began to see those different opportunities and those people, it's like, wait a minute, I can do more than just be a father, or just not be on drugs, or just not go to jail. I can actually go to college. I mean, that was never growing, and it wasn't a concept to me. But it got to the point to where when I graduated from high school, it wasn't even a thought that I wasn't going to college. It was just an automatic direct. Now, football helped with that, but it was just an automatic going to college. When I was in college, I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do with it. I just knew that I had to graduate.
Yeah.
You get in, you get out. I was a 4-year plan. I walked in and I knew when graduation was in 1986. Right. Okay, when do they do graduation? They say, okay, it's always the third week. I went fast forward 4 years. That's my graduation date. And every action I took regarding school, summer classes, was to make sure that I met that date. And I met it.
So even after seeing Ted Shaw being an attorney and stuff like that, you still haven't made up. You knew that I could do more, but you still haven't made it. You didn't make up in your mind yet that you wanted to be an attorney.
No, I think at Ted Shaw, Pete Saunders, and a couple other people made me think about wanting to be a lawyer. But at that time, it was a criminal attorney. There's another individual, Charles Ogletree. So there was something about him that also appealed to me, and knowing about him, and again, met him, learned about him through Ted Shaw and all that stuff. So, and came and found out his work, and again, growing in the projects and everything that was involved with the criminal justice system and all that. So I wanted to be a criminal attorney. So I knew I was going to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
What they didn't tell you was that when you get into college, and by the way, with this ALP program, it was led by this priest, this white man. All the students that went through there were black, were African American, every last one of us. But it was led by this Jewish bearded white man called Father John Thomas Meehan, who they may not make him a saint, but there are those of us who consider him a saint because he transformed our lives.
Yeah,
he changed our life. I mean, he's still alive now. He's not doing that well. He's still up in. He's retired and he's up in the in New York, but it was led by him. And one of the things that they did, and he had this big. So in New York, or on television, they used to have these not gypsy cabs, the yellow cabs that were like from London with the bubbles on them. So he had a black one like that, and he would pack us in that car and take us to colleges. So we went to see Brown. We went to see Amherst. We went to see Wesleyan. We would go to see all the Seven Sisters, up in New England.
Wow.
And so we went to Harvard. I mean, we literally went to Boston and went to Harvard to see Harvard.
Yeah.
And his whole thing was, you can do this. And he had already sent other students there. And so we would meet with them and literally stay in their dorm while we were doing that visit and just get to see what college life was about. So it broadened my horizons to the point where, wait a minute, this is bigger than the Bronx. I can do other things. Ironically, I ended up staying and going to Fordham University, which not a slouch.
It's still a great school. It's still great.
Right. So I'm not embarrassed by it at all.
Yeah.
And there's another long story about how I ended up there, but at the end of the day, it made me think about being a lawyer. What they didn't prepare me for was leaving my house. Going, and I stayed because I played ball there. I stayed on campus, and I had my own independence. I had people of the other gender. He's
out of these streets. You can say he's out of these streets. That's fine.
and I ended up pledging. I played ball.
Nice.
And so by the time that first year was over, I had a shoe size that was higher than my GPA.
Lord.
Now, I already told you that I have 3 siblings. I mean, my mother had 3 brothers and my 3 sons and 1 daughter. I'm the oldest of all of them.
Okay.
So at that point, when they sent the notice of probation home, my dad was, okay, if you're not going to take this serious, I got 3 other kids to put through college. You figure it out.
Man.
At that point, I had to start paying my own way. So I had a partial scholarship, and the rest I had to figure out how to pay my own way. So I was working. At that point, I knew if the teacher was late, how much money they had wasted out of my pocket.
Just calculated everything.
I knew
down to the minute.
Was calculated down to the minute because it was coming out of my own pocket.
Right. It's different when you're paying for it. Yep.
So as you start progressing, it's always it's the most difficult thing is to have a low GPA at the beginning and then catch up and build it.
Have to climb up. Yeah.
Climb out of that hole.
Yeah.
And as I talk to people, say don't fall in that hole the first year because it's very, no matter how great you do, it's very hard to get out of that hole the first time. Plus the classes get progressively harder.
Yeah.
So fast forward, it's now time for me to take the LSATs. I didn't know anything about Kaplan. I didn't know anything about, studying for the LSATs or anything like that. So I get my scores back and I'm thinking it is horrible. I'm never going to law school. So I give up the dream. My wife and I met in high school. We started dating. Awesome. We dated in college. We ended up getting married early. And then I got a great job out of college. As a matter of fact, it was even before I graduated. They offered me a job. I'll figure it out. So I was working great for the time. I was working in Parks and Recreation in New York City. Nice. And I was in the recruitment office. And they were paying me a five-digit salary. I was like, okay, I'll take it. Yeah. I'll absolutely take it. My wife also had a job. And so we were doing well. And then, we had kids. I got promotions very quickly. We had kids. And at that point, it was like, okay, I can't go to law school. I'm dad. This is my focus. And I thought I'd given up that dream. Wow. Come to find out that when I look back on it and I talk to people, given my background and everything else that I did in diversity of blah, 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 that LSAT would have got me into most law schools. But I just didn't know. I didn't have any mentors at that time in college to really help me with that process. I knew I had people who were now lawyers, but I didn't reach out to them. That was my neglect. If I had gone to Ted Shaw or to Pete or one of them and asked them for help, they would have given it to me and told me, but I neglected to do that. And so fast forward, I had a pretty good career, a bunch of different things. I worked in nonprofit, private sector, public sector, the whole 9 yards. But the movie Bucket List came out. And, we see the movie Bucket List with the family. We're having dinner and we go around and say, what's on your bucket list? Okay, the girls say what it is. My wife says hers. Comes to me and both of my daughters says, oh, we know what daddy's is. I'm like, what? So being a lawyer. That caught me. That caught me. My daughters knew that all my life I wanted to be a lawyer. And so it was like, wow. So at that time, one was already in college. The other one was getting ready to go into high school. Wow. And I said, let me give it a shot.
How old were you at this time?
46. Wow. Well, okay. So no. So that would have been 45, 44, 45. 44, 45. Because I started, I graduated at 50 when I was,
You graduated law school at 50.
Yeah. Technically I was 49 and then 2 months later I turned 50.
Wow. Got you.
Yeah.
Got you.
So, and I had a full-time job. I never expected to practice law. It was, I was going to do this. I was going to get my law degree. It was going to be another arrow in my quiver just to make me just that much more of a bad guy. And it was never my intention. Honestly, it was just like, just go get it and move on. I remember sitting there and they were talking about dean's lists. I'll never forget, may she rest in peace, Barbara, who was my executive assistant at the time. They're talking about the dean's list. I said, I don't care about the dean's list. I just want to get in and get it. Right.
Man.
And so obviously that changed when I got in, and we'll talk about that later on. But but that's how I ended up in law school.
Wow. And what law school did you go to?
Went to University of District Columbia, David A. Clark School of Law. What I referred to it as my law school. So much so that as soon as I graduated, I went on the foundation. I'm on the foundation for the law school. I'm actually its treasurer. And anything I can do for the law school, I will participate in and help in any way, shape, or form. It was just an experience that of all the places I could have gone to, I can't imagine that I would have had a better experience than going to UDC. Now, obviously, people talk about Howard and HBCU. I couldn't go to Howard because I had to keep my day job.
Yeah, and they don't have a part-time program. Yeah,
yeah. My wife was very clear about me doing this, going after this dream. You can go after this, but two things: you cannot change our current standard of living, and you cannot change our retirement. So I couldn't take out a whole bunch of loans and then have to be using our retirement to pay those back. I paid off our undergrad stuff, and so that was that.
So how did you end up in DC in the first place?
Oh, a former boss of mine, may he rest in peace, Richard Murphy, made me an offer I couldn't refuse. We worked together in New York in the Dinkins administration. Like I said, I stayed in the government for a while and moved up, and was at the Department of Youth Services there. And then Giuliani came into office. I left there and went to work in healthcare. I ran some ambulatory care facilities for St. Mary's Hospital in Brooklyn, Crown Heights, Brooklyn, on Buffalo Avenue. And then Murphy called, and he moved down to D.C. and said, "I've got an offer you can't refuse." He kept making me offers. I said, "Man,
I'm not leaving yet.
I can't do this. I'm not leaving here."
Man.
But then he made this offer, and I said, "Okay." Talked to my wife, and I said, "Yeah, it's time. It's time." Part of it was also DC, New York was changing a lot, and it was time for my kids to go to school. And so when I tell that story, people say, "And you brought them to DC school?" We moved to Maryland first.
Right. This one was like Chocolate City. This one was really Chocolate City.
We moved to Maryland first. But we made a decision that we don't know what so we lived in Silver Spring, Maryland, up in the Burtonville area.
Okay.
Bought a house up there, and then we got the jobs. My wife I got the job with Murphy. My wife then ended up getting a job just months later working with Anthony Williams when he was a CFO for the city. And then when he became elected mayor, he took her and she did a whole bunch of stuff. She's the true rock star in the family.
Awesome.
And then I got appointed director of Parks and Recreation. So with that, we had to move into DC. So that's where we live. And it was a good thing we did that, because when we first got there, we said, we don't know what jobs we're going to have. We don't know ultimately we're going to live. So we went and found a school that we thought was good for our children to go to. And they ended up going to St. Anne's and Nebraska Avenue in DC. My wife and I both went to Catholic school. And in Catholic schools, being Jamaican, that's, that's part of the thing. That's where you can get a good education and discipline from. And so we put them there, and they stayed there. Then they went to St. John's, and then went to college, Towson, and
nice.
UVA and Morgan and Coppin. Story for another time. 2 daughters from 4 colleges. Don't have to worry about all that.
Right. No, I feel you.
So
just going back to when you said your daughter reminded you of your bucket list, were you like suppressing the thought of being a lawyer? Like, was it something that you needed to be reminded of, or you just felt like, I'm comfortable here, I don't want to just mess it up? Like, what about that?
So I gave it a shot back when I was in New York before we came down here. I took the LSATs again and gave it a shot. And then just let it just, the job offer came up. I mean, so it was like, okay, so let me go take the job. And it's always stayed in my head about being a lawyer. And the wild part about it is so many people actually thought I was a lawyer before I became a lawyer. One of the things that the ALP was so stressed so much. Well, 2 of the things they stressed so much was critical thinking, challenge everything, accept nothing on face value. Even if you read it, okay, what did they have an agenda behind it? If someone tells you it, what's their agenda? Be probative about it. Don't disbelieve, just try to validate.
Just test it,
Do your own homework, your own research sometimes. And the other thing they were critical about was listening. One of the things that Father, he's Greg Chisholm, but he's Father Chisholm now, said was, it's amazing the things you can hear if you just listen carefully. And he would often say that some of the most important things that you hear are things that are never said. And I didn't know what that meant as a kid, of course, but as I began growing up, it's like, okay, so they're telling me this, but what are they not saying? right? Let me listen carefully for the things that information they're not putting in there.
Yeah.
And those two aspects were very critical. And so I think people would always think the way I would ask questions and the way I would write and research things, and always reading and trying to find just more knowledge. Folks just kind of thought I was a lawyer, and I guess I never acted like one because there's laws against that. Yeah. But it was always stayed in my mind of what I could do. But at that point, I kind of said, it's, as I told you, 44, 45, 46. Yeah. This is late in life. I'm not going to go do this. But then my kids and my wife backed me up on it and just said, hey, let's go do this.
That's amazing. And I feel like UDC is a perfect school for that, because I know I've had classmates who it was their second career and they went through a similar process. And I'm sure a lot of people listening too, I know, even think of my older sister, who sometimes, she always says like, I was wanting to be a lawyer, but there's too much to go. And I'm like, do it. I've had classmates who was their third, fourth career. Like, it's possible.
I wasn't the oldest in my class. I mean, that was the other.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
I was definitely not the oldest in my class.
Yeah.
Certainly nowhere near the youngest, but definitely was not the oldest in my class.
Man.
And I'll never forget, there's a professor there called John Britton, who's legendary himself.
Dean Britton,
one of the things that he asked me toward the end, he said, how did you function or deal with your classmates being so much younger than you? And I told him, I said, well, honestly, a lot of them are the same age as my daughters. And so it was just a matter of looking at their perspective. I knew what my perspective was, but it was really listening to their perspective, because when I went out in the world, a lot of my clients were going to be their age, or going to be from their profession, their background. So it was very important for me to try to listen. Yes, they gave me a lot of deference because I was the old man, but I think a lot of the deference came because I respected their opinion as well, and recognized that in the field of law, we were all newbies. I may have a whole bunch of other experiences to complement it, but with regarding the law, we were both learning. We were all learning it brand new.
Start at zero. Everybody starts at zero.
So I think that was very helpful, and that I recognized that, and I think they appreciate it.
Man. So speaking of you having prior experience, how did you feel like it benefited you going to law school with a career before?
Well, and so when so I started with the process and with the thought of I was going to go back. I was running a nonprofit that did affordable housing at the time. So right around then, the housing market decided to tank, and loans to nonprofit developers were not forthcoming, and so the board agreed to sunset the organization. So
sunset, what do you mean by sunset?
Shut it down, because a nonprofit, you shut it down. Don't sell it, you just have to shut it down.
Okay.
And so as a nonprofit, when I started and everyone's talking about trying to find a job when they graduate, I was like, that's not my problem. I have a job. I found myself in that situation. I was like, wait a minute, I'm going to
humbled real quick.
I got to figure out what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And so there was a real tension for me was, am I going to go to a large firm? Am I going to go to a boutique firm? It would never cross my mind to start my own shop. That just wasn't an option. But a number of friends, a number of mentors of mine told me, Bob, you can't go to a large firm because that's going to be like putting a shark in a guppy bowl. And they said, because you're going to be older than your partners, than the people who are supervising you, and you're going to have more world life experience. So when you go out and meet a client, the client's going to look to you. And those partners who they're young, their ego is going to get very offended by that. Coupled with the fact that when you first start, you're not going to get a whole lot of experience and yada, 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 yada. And so your skills are not going to be complemented and used. So they said, okay, look for a boutique firm. Well, I had some interviews, and two firms came to the end. And in fact, one firm, on the day I got admitted to the bar, called me. And said, you know what, we think, quote unquote, we think we could do fantastic things with you. We just don't know what. Therefore, we're not going to be able to offer you the position.
Wow.
I'm sitting at lunch. My daughter's across the table. My wife is next to me. I'm on the phone. The phone rang. I showed my wife who it was. And I'm thinking I'm about to get great news. The day I get admitted to the bar. And he said that. I was like,
man, you just ruined it.
I'm not going to bring this day down.
Yeah.
So fast forward, my wife then says, God didn't bring you this far for no reason. Why don't you start your own shop? You've done business, you know about business, you've got a tremendous network. Why don't you just do your own thing? Here I am.
Wow. How long ago was that? How long were you?
2015. Yeah, 2015. I mean, I did. So I graduated in 2014, but I didn't pass the bar the first time. And so when I tell the bar passer stories to folks at the law school, I tell them, I graduated summa cum laude, magna cum laude. Awesome. They created an award for me, the Edgar and Jean Camp Award for me.
Nice.
It's a custom. I mean, they started it. I was the first person to ever get it. They said it's not something we're going to give out annually. I don't know how many people have given it to, but it was created for me. I was the first student bar president from the evening school, from the evening class. So I was all that in a bag of chips.
Yeah, he's killing
it. So when I graduated, I believed my press clippings. And so when it came to the bar, I was like, okay, I took care of this. I'm going to take care of the bar. Well, the bar had other plans. The bar exam had other plans. And so I didn't pass it the first time.
But do you have a horror story? It was a bar horror story from the first time you took it. Anything that went wrong, that messed up on the day of the exam, during studying, anything?
No, so it's interesting. It wasn't the day of the exam. I kind of realized, I mean, I have never said this publicly, but the Monday after the exam, my wife and I went out to dinner and I said, honey, unless God actually comes and change my scores, I failed the exam. I mean, I knew it while I was taking the exam.
The Lord himself got to come off his throne and walk down to that test center.
He had to go in and just change those bubbles and all that stuff, because other than that, I just blew it. I knew I blew it.
You felt it.
It was interesting because our anniversary is June 28th, coming up.
Yeah.
After next. And that was the first time we took there was a program called Shimmer, which focused on Maryland. And that's where I was taking a bar. And so our first live practice exam was June 28th, was the day of our anniversary. Yeah. And so we went over to Howard, and it's live fire. You sit there, it's moderated, the whole 9 yards. And so it's like a mini bar, if you will, but still a bar exam.
Yeah.
They gave me my score. They send you your scores that evening. And I remember calling a good friend of mine, and I told her, I said, I'm not going to pass this bar. And she was adamant about that. I was going to pass it. And so we just got to double down and study it. But at that point, I kind of knew I was too far behind the 8 ball. I was, less than a month away. And there were so many topics that I had not yet, hard topics I had not yet covered, that I didn't even get these basic topics done. And I said, this is going to be a thing.
You still decided to take it anyway. You didn't feel like I'll just wait till next time, or you like maybe just try it anyway?
So that was some good advice that I got from a couple of people. They said, even if you don't do well, you'll have the experience under your belt.
Nice.
Because the next time you take it, or if you wait a year or wait till the February one, that'll be your first time doing it. So you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
So I went in, took it. So I knew all the machinations, what they're going to do, how the book comes in. But what I did the second time was I took what they were teaching me, but I also took the study habits that made me successful.
Yeah.
And I combined them. So by time the second bar was around, it was like Rain Man. I saw the answers before I finished the question. I mean, I knew where they were going. And there was one, and I don't remember what his name was. I do have in my notes. There was one instructor. He said, Bob, you have to be the hunter, not the hunted. Right? Yeah. Don't let them do that to you. And the second thing is, stop trying to be so smart. The answer is basic. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Just it's right there in front of you.
Yeah.
And those two pieces of advice I wrote down on index cards and brought them into the bar exam with me.
They allowed you to bring
those two things were on my desk. Be the hunter, not the hunted, and stop being so damn smart. I just laid them right there. And so by the time the exam was over, I came home. I told my wife, I said, either I failed this galactically or I knocked it out the park.
Amazingly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was, because everything was just coming to me so easily.
Yeah,
they have time. I'm finished. I'm answering all. There's no last minute fill in because maybe you have a good chance, 25% of getting it right or something like that.
Right.
No, I was finished sitting there, kind of twiddling my thumbs.
Wow.
It just came to me so easily.
Dope.
Because I had taken what I did the first time was I forgot all my study habits and was just going with what they told me.
Yep.
I think the real key that I tell people is you got to know yourself and you got to know what works for you, and then take the tools that you're getting from others and meld them together.
Yep.
And then that makes all the world different.
Yeah. I feel like I didn't figure that out until like the second half of my study, like the second month of my study time. It was like, wait, no, I'm going to do this my way. Like, I don't feel comfortable right now. Like, no, I need to get in my zone and figure it out. And that was helpful.
And the good news was once I failed and I told other people, then you find out all these other great people who failed the bar. You know, hey, Michelle failed it the first time also. It's like, oh, you could have told me that the first time. I would have
that would have helped.
But there was an interesting thing. I was considered the rock star of the evening program. There was another guy from the day program who's Johan. We were both, we didn't compete against each other, but he was an absolute rock star of the day program.
Yeah.
Turns out we both failed it.
Wow.
And we then saw each other one day passing at the school, and he said, I hate that this was his words. I hate to say this, but finding out that you failed was the only thing that made me get over my failure.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, Johan, the same exact thing.
We helped each other out. We didn't realize.
Right. So it's like, okay, the bar is not a test of your ability to be a lawyer. It's not a test of your competency. It's just a hurdle that you have to get through. It's unfortunately there are a lot of lawyers who are practicing that pass the bar that I won't call them idiots, but they should not be representing clients.
Common sense ain't so common.
Exactly. And then there's a lot of people who are incredibly brilliant, but they can't pass the bar.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, they can't pass the bar.
Yeah.
So
you can't take it personal.
It's not an indication as to whether or not I was going to be a good lawyer or not.
Yeah.
At least at the time it wasn't. Now it's not. But at the time, you obviously if you don't pass it, you're just devastated because everyone else is passing.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm blown away, honestly, because this is the fact that you had a whole family, you had a whole career. What pressure did you feel like, just as a man, as a Black man, having a wife and kids in this time to succeed at this thing? You took a chance on yourself. How's it? You still have to be a husband, you still have to be a father, and you're chasing after your own dreams. Like, what was that pressure like?
Well, and I looked over my shoulder for a second because my wife is right there, and she's getting ready to leave. Forgive me.
That's all good.
All right. So I'm gonna tell two stories. One, the first one is my wife saying that I support you doing this. It, in a sense, kind of became our dream. She was so supportive of me that me becoming a lawyer was like her becoming a lawyer. She jokes around and says, I didn't go to law school. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I did go to law school.
Facts.
Because of all the time and sacrifice that she made.
Yeah.
But also she would, my youngest daughter was still in the house at the time. Between the two of them, they were so incredibly supportive. I first started trying to do my reading when I'd come home at night. And when I began realizing I was reading the same page, the same paragraph 5 times, and not understanding what I read, I said, I got to come up with a different plan. And so what I would do is I would get up Saturday morning, go down to the downstairs office, and I would say, this is my reading day. And I would do all my reading, outlining, whatever it was to be done. But my family would bring me breakfast. And then when lunchtime came, they would take the breakfast tray away and bring me a lunch tray. And then, they would then say, it's dinner time. Or we're going to the movies. And so that I would stop at around 6, 7 o'clock. I had to, if I didn't accomplish it all then and there, then Sunday night after Sunday dinner, I would finish up everything. But from Saturday around 6, 7 o'clock, all the way through, Sunday church or whatever we got to do, I gave to them.
Yeah.
But their support while I was doing that reading, I mean, was just, you couldn't buy that. The second thing is, I used to coach girls basketball, AAU basketball, and we were good. We made it down to Orlando, and we played down there and all that stuff. But my daughter then started high school, and I said, okay, she doesn't need me. She's going into high school now. I can go do law school. Second year in, I'm taking her to basketball practice, and she says the following words to me: "Dad, I wish you hadn't gone to law school. I miss you." At that moment, I had said I was going to school to drop out. That was it. It was done.
Sheesh.
But from the time that we were there, that she said it was inside Rock Creek Park, and then I told you they went to St. John's. We get to the front of the gym. She said, "But you started it now, so you got to finish." And she kisses me, hugs me, and jumps out the car.
Emotional roller coaster.
Absolutely. It was the absolute. It was like I was at the bottom. She brought me back to the top. It was like, whoa, what just happened? And I called my wife and told her, and she said, "Yeah, that's how she really feels. She wished you hadn't gone, but now that you're doing it, you have to finish. You can't quit. You can't give up." Shelley Broderick, Dean Broderick, she knows that story. She said, "Do you have any regrets?" And I said, "That anytime anybody asked me about any regrets or struggles, it was that 5-10 minute window, knowing that she was struggling and needed her dad, but I was in law school, but she was willing to make the sacrifice and say, no, you started this, you have to finish."
Amazing.
And so it wasn't easy. But as I tell other folks now when they're trying to go to law school, particularly if they're older, I said, don't do it for anybody else other than yourself. Don't let it be a fleeting dream. Because at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, when you're trying to read or brief these cases, or you've got to do a closing argument, or you got to do something, they're not going to be around. The people you're doing this for, they're not going to be. You have to have it within you to be able to say, "I want this for me. I want to get this done." My girls now, what they will say is, "We know that we can do anything at any point in time in life because we saw you do it, Dad." And again, that wasn't my mindset at the time, but they've said that on numerous occasions. "We saw what you did and the sacrifices you made at the stage in your life. We realize that we can do anything we want to at any stage in our life as well as now. So we don't have to do everything right now."
Yeah. That's amazing, man. I feel like my pops had a similar journey too, because he was in education, and he went for his master's and his PhD. While it was 4 of us too. I'm the youngest of 4. Had a wife, had a job, went to school in the evenings, in his 50s, going to school, and he got his PhD a couple of years ago. And it's that same feeling I got too. Like,
how old were you when he was doing that?
I was in high school while he was doing this. So I was like 16, 17.
You can kind of relate to that.
Yeah.
Because in high school, there's all these activities and things that you want. And there were probably occasions when he said, "Sorry, I can't make it," or "Is this one an important one?" Well, you don't want to tell him they're all important to me, Dad.
No, for real. I was like, so he'll sometimes take me to his classes at the school. I'm like, I want to be here. This is long and bro to go home. Yeah. It was like things like that. I saw the process of him juggling those things. So to hear your story, it's amazing. And let's say, and it's possible. It's possible. Like, amazing. So graduate law school, you passed the bar. Now you're starting your own firm. What was that initial process like, getting things together? Did you get the office? Did you get some pens and paper? Like, what was that initial process like?
All right. So start my own practice. And I said, okay, you working from home. I don't have any money. I can't go get an office. I'm working from home. So one of the things that Maryland had right before we graduated, there was a lawsuit a case that was decided. I don't remember the exact case, but basically said that anybody who was in the system that was getting a bond hearing had to be represented by an attorney. And so what they had was the attorney. I don't remember the exact name of it, but basically you can sign up and you became part of this program, and you worked inside the jail, and you did bond hearings representing clients or people who were arrested at their bond hearings. And you would get paid $50 an hour while you were there, but you worked a full 8-hour shift, and you were inside the jail. In some of the jails, you couldn't have any electronics, so you had no laptop, no phone, no nothing. You bring a book and you do. Others, you were able to do your laptop and get work done. So my very first, one of the very first times that I'm doing this, I get a client. I hear his facts and circumstances, and I said, I can represent you on this one on the outside. And he said, would you? I said, absolutely. So he takes my card and he says, okay, I'm definitely going to call you, As I'm leaving, he says, hey, thank you, all this other stuff. I get home 2 o'clock in the morning because I was working the 4 to 12 shift. So it was actually out in Prince George's County, which is one of the places where you're not permitted to bring electronics. So I get home, I'm all excited. I jump into bed. I tell my wife, I got my first client. And she said, what? And, groggy eyed, and like, why am I waking her up? And I said, told her the story. I said, I gave him a business card. And she said, what business card? And at that point, I realized what she was asking. And she then followed up with, you mean the business card? You gave our business card in the jail with our home address in it?
Oh, no. Lock the doors. Yo.
The following day, my daughter and I went out looking for offices.
Immediately
went out looking for office space. I'm like, okay, I can't do this at home. If I'm going to do criminal work,
right,
doing it out of my house.
Right.
Young daughter, I got my wife. No, that's not an option. Right. So we found a space in Bethesda.
Awesome.
Yeah, right now, Elm Street in Bethesda. It was with 2 CPAs. And myself was just renting in one little office. And that's kind of how it got started. I was doing door law at that time. And people say, what's door law? Anything that walked through the door with a check, I could represent them. So at that point, because I recently passed the bar, I knew every type of law. So I'm figuring I can do it.
Do everything.
You want me to do it? No problem.
I'm gonna figure it out.
I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna call mentors. I'm gonna research it. I'm going to figure it out. It may not be exact. I mean, I may spend more time than what you're paying me for, but I need that to come in. And so one of my first clients was a DUI. They paid me that money. I said, I got rent for the next couple of months. I wasn't even thinking about salaries. Like, I just pay my rent. Right, just rent for the space.
And this was your only job, so you've quit the government job. You don't have any side thing. This is the only thing you're doing.
That was it. That was, again, the saint in this was my wife.
Yeah.
She had the faith, she had the vision, she had the confidence that I can do this. And she just said, we'll figure it out and make it work. So she had her full-time day job, and I'm struggling. Like I said, it wasn't about paying her, it wasn't about paying myself. It was, let me pay this rent. I don't want to lay the rent, and make sure I don't get this bar. My 2 goals for the end of 2015.
District of Columbia's median rent per month.
So good. It's so good. So good.
I don't know why she did that.
My Alexa be bugging too sometimes. It's fine. I can edit
it out. Yeah. So the end of 2015. So my goal to complete the end of 2015 was to not be disbarred and to not miss a rent payment. Those were my 2 goals.
That was a standard. Okay, got you.
Those were just, do not get disbarred,
right?
And then do not and be able to pay your rent.
Yeah.
Fortunately, neither has happened all these times. I've always been able to pay my rent. Sometimes I haven't been able to pay myself, but I've always been able to pay my landlord.
Amazing.
And then from there, couple of things happened at the same time. I was really focusing on family. I excelled at it. I was a TA for family law in law school. But my nature is to be very empathetic and to get very involved with my clients. And when you're going through a family law situation, you really become not just a lawyer, but you also become their counselor. And and really horrible stuff happens on both sides, your client as well as the other side. And because of my nature, I was bringing it home, and it was affecting my relationship. She never said so in so many words, but it was pretty clear to me that I needed to stop doing family law.
Can you give an example without giving too much details? Like, what aspects where you feel like you was
so if there's a custody matter, they would call me because father or mother or whatever is at the house banging on the door, and she doesn't want to give up the child, even though it's her time to give up the child, and she's crying on the phone about well, no, he's not going to give her back, and things, the whole drama that goes along with that. And then the police are getting called and all that stuff that's going on, and you're trying to tell people, I'm not that kind of lawyer. I mean, I'm here to represent you for the custody issue. But when I get off the phone, I've got 2 daughters myself. I know what that's like. I'm a dad. I'm like, if you deny me to be able to see my child, again, I'm supposed to be representing her, but I'm dad, and I can understand his standpoint. So when wife is trying to talk, my head is somewhere else. I'm there both physically. I mean, not physically, but intellectually and emotionally.
Yeah.
And you know, I've come home. So when I come home, I'm supposed to be with her.
Right.
And so I realized that was probably time for me to surrender that.
Yeah.
Criminal law, like I said, I told you from a young age, I always wanted to be a criminal attorney. I did an internship at PDS, which even told me more I wanted to be a criminal attorney.
Awesome.
Who did, the folks at DC Public Defender Service are just legendary.
Yeah.
But it became clear to me early on that I was too old for that. Yeah, you have to be doing that full time.
Right. Right.
Had one case, and it started in a jail where a guy got arrested. He was on parole from federal court, and so if this assault had gone through, he would have had to go back and do federal time. So I began representing him, and I got another attorney to work with me. And we lost in district court. We appealed it up to Court of Appeal, to circuit court.
Yeah.
Jury trial, whole 9 yards. The jury was out for minutes. The
That's how you know.
the what do they call it? Not the substitute juror, the alternate juror.
Yeah,
she was confused. I heard the state's attorney ask her how she would have gone. She would have said guilty. We walked back in, and the guy's bigger than me. I mean, I'm a pretty big guy myself. So he starts taking out his wallet, took off his watch, and said, "Here, could you give these to my fiance for me?" Because he kind of knew what was going on.
Sheesh.
So at this point, the jury foreman, who was a little Asian woman, she starts reading out the verdict. I'm taking the stuff from him, and my heart is racing through my chest.
Yeah.
Like, this man is going to jail. Like, wait a minute, I'm going to go home, but this man is going to go to jail because I could not do any better for him.
Yeah.
He turns around and just says, "Thank you, thank you, thank you," and picks me up off the ground. And at that point, I guess what she said eventually registered in my brain.
You were here?
Because I said audibly to where the judge even kind of said, "Excuse me." I said, "Oh, forgive me." I said, "Oh shit, we won." Yeah. And the state's attorney heard it. Everybody else heard it.
Oh man!
I was like,
you couldn't even hear what the verdict was.
Oh, I was sure that he was going to jail. Oof. Everything around, all the facts were going to jail. Yeah. I walked out, saw his fiance. His fiance comes not to him but to me, thanking me and all this stuff. Yada yada yada. I leave. I'm on the get on my call on the phone, and like I always do, good news, bad news. I call my wife first, and I tell her. She says, "Great, congratulations." Da, 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 da. So that I said, "No, that was my last case. I'm never doing that again." And she said, "Why?" I said, "We're talking about a man's freedom.
Yeah.
I can't do that willy-nilly half-ass. All right? Yeah. Either I've got to do that full-time and give it everything I got, or I can't do it. When we're talking about money, hey, you know what? Okay, that's money. We're talking about people's feelings or a job. Okay. Right? Yeah. We're talking about someone's freedom. Yeah. There is nothing that I think that only when you lose it do you realize how important it is.
No, for real.
And so when I was standing there watching this guy, it's like, I'm going to go home and he's going to go to jail. Yeah. He is going to be locked up again, not see his kids, not see his fiance. Yeah. And that became very, very real for me. That was no longer wide-eyed, special, just another job, I'm going to be a superhero type thing. No. Not unless I'm going to wear that cape all the time. Right. Not unless
there's going to be another one of those cases the next week. We give another trial next one. Right. Like,
so I got a high respect for those criminal defense attorneys. Yeah. Who even are prosecutors, but they do this full time. They have to know their craft. Yeah. And they really need to know what they're doing because there is an awful lot on the line. So I gave up. I gave up criminal. And it's just that I can't do that.
Right. So you settled on estate planning and other areas.
I do estate planning and estate administration. And again, there's another story about that one. I said my executive assistant, may she rest in peace, because shortly after while I was in law school,
Mm-hmm.
She was having issues with her husband and said, okay, you need to graduate and represent me in my divorce.
Wow.
Sure enough, when I graduated, she came to me for the divorce. She was serious. I didn't represent her because I was a colleague of mine or mentor of mine. He did. And she got divorced.
Wow.
But
you had a client before you graduated. That's crazy.
Basically. But shortly after that, she got a diagnosis of brain cancer stage 4.
Man.
So she calls and tells me, and she says she needs to put things in place for her 2 sons. And again, I wasn't doing estate planning. I didn't know much about it. So I called this mentor, Steve Schachtel. His daughter and I actually went to law school together. And we graduated together. So I called Steve and I said, I've got this situation. I need help. And so he said, okay, fine. Barbara said, I'll go, but only if you come with me. I'm not going to do it with some strange guy because I want to do it. So I go in. And so during law school and during life, estate planning was probably on the legal excitement level was probably right up there with watching paint dry in your office. Why would an attorney go through And do estate planning? Yeah. It is the most boring thing in the world. Law school, at least that's what you think.
Right.
So, and it's transactional. I mean, I wanted to be in the action. I want to be doing things. The way Steve engaged with her, I was like, wait, this is estate planning? This is how you work with clients? Huh. This is a little different. So when she left, he said, do you want to work on it? I said, absolutely. And so he helped me put together her plan when he would have follow-up meetings. When she passed away, it was as though Steve was in her life as long as I was, the way the family knew him.
Wow.
And the way he knew the family. And I realized, okay, wait a minute. This is a little different here. This is not just the transactional stuff. You're actually dealing with people, helping them plan and protect the people themselves and the people they love. But also coming from the projects and working in having done affordable housing in inner city and all that kind of stuff, realizing that the lack of planning also leads to people losing assets, losing their generational wealth. You've got grandmas out here who are cash poor but house rich. They bought their house in DC in the 30s, in the 40s for a nickel, practically, and it's now worth $1 million. Okay, so they don't have a whole lot of cash, but they're sitting on $1 million.
Yeah,
they don't have a will, and so now it goes into probate, gets divided amongst their kids. They fight amongst themselves, and then they don't pay the real estate taxes. Tax goes up on tax sale, gone.
Yeah,
and then you see neighborhoods starting to change. Didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that part of it. And so estate planning affects all of that. And so I began to realize my age bracket, my parents are alive, my mother-in-law is alive, I'm married, I have kids, I'm African-American, decent income. So many of us have no plans, had no estate plans. And I'm like, wait a minute, something's wrong here.
Just out here living life. You just thinking everything's good.
Right. We're just going about our business. Right. And so I began to realize, and then there was also not a lot of estate planning attorneys who look like me, look like us. It's definitely serving our community. And so I said, wait a minute, this is a big pond out here with not a lot of fishing poles in there. This is something I can do good and do well at the same time.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how I ended up in it, because how Steve and I saw it was more about relationships and relationship building, and helping people plan for their futures, not just financially, but just for care purposes. You know, I do presentations all the time, and I give a scenario of, if you're on welfare with a only child and the baby's father was an abuser, do you need an estate plan? They're like, most people say, why would they? What if you die? What's going to happen with your child? Okay. If it's a wrongful death and you collect money, who's going to manage the money that you're going to get for that child? Is it the baby daddy who was abusive to you? And both going to get the money and the child? Is that what you want to do? And so there's so many reasons for everybody to have an estate plan. And I tell them, if you don't create your own, the state you're living in or the district has already created one for you.
Sheesh.
And in many times, it's not really what you want. They just
it's not for your benefit.
You know, every client, whoever I've ever dealt with said, here's me say, you have family and you have relatives, and the two are not always the same. Statute gives to your relatives. Okay. Your estate plan, you give and you define who your family is. You may have been born with certain people, but through life, there are people who are closer to you or who you want to take care of, or the people who would make decisions for you because they know you better than people you were born with.
Man.
So you get to find that in your own estate plan. And so it's become a passion of mine for everyone to get an estate plan. It just because there's so many reasons, and when you talk about common sense and so many tragic things that happen when people don't have plans and what it puts people through. The fights inside probate court, how people end up fighting amongst each other, even if the person is sick and alive. But again, another phrase that you'll hear me say: if you show me, if you don't believe people will change, show me a sick body or a dead body with money. People are gonna change. It's like all of a sudden, all the children got along. Mom dies now and has $1 million house. And somebody wants to say, okay, we don't want to sell it. We want to keep it in the family. Like, wait a minute. That's $250,000 that comes to me. We don't need to sell that house. And it may not be the kid themselves. It may be the spouse of the kid who's saying, that's $250,000 we can get out of there.
Yep. I'm trying to buy a new house.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. $250 can change a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
Shit will change mine. So people start fighting about stuff like that. So yeah, it's just I found the thing that I love, that I'm excited to do. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy working with my clients. I enjoy learning about estate planning. So that's that.
One of the themes I feel like it keeps popping up, even from when you were picked up by it was ALP, the program you were in,
Archbishop Leadership Project.
Yeah, ALP. And so now I feel like opportunity and information is key, because at that moment you were given an opportunity to broaden your horizon. And now with estate planning, I feel like the key to it all is just information. We just didn't know, like you talk about in our community, we just didn't have the information to go about estate planning or knowing what the repercussions are if I do sell this house, or I don't have a will, or if I do these different things. But being able to expose people is so important. It may seem so simple. I'm just telling you stuff that I've been through. It's like, no, if your eyes haven't seen something, or if your ears haven't heard something, doing that for the first time, it's life changing. So I feel like opportunity and information is huge.
Well, so it's interesting. Your podcast is part of that information, part of that educational on the different topics. Joe Madison, that was his thing. Information is power. So many of us were denied the knowledge or the access to the information. So we made decisions based on the information we had at the time. And when you look back at it, once you become more informed, you look back, dang, I wish I had known differently. Yeah. Because the information wasn't given freely and readily. So I'm the kind of guy, if you invite me to speak on the topic of estate planning, I'm going. If you got a webinar and you want me to participate, I'm going. Before COVID, I was known as the guy who would show up for anywhere, your barbecue, church, temple, hospital, employer. Because I came with my own screen, my own projector, my laptop. I said, all I need is electricity. Okay. Wow. I will be able to do a presentation there. Just give me electricity. I'm set. I don't need, they said, you need a projector? No, I got it. You need a screen? No, I got it. I walk with my own stuff. And because the key, and I always start off by saying that you don't have to hire me, but hire somebody. Good. All I'm here to do is to make sure that you're educated enough to know what you need and to be able to assess the quality of what you're getting. Wow. Doesn't have to be me, but hire somebody who's qualified to be able to meet your needs. And so whatever I do is always about education and information and making sure that people have that, because they don't do certain things because they don't know. Yeah. Let me give you a quick example. Very, very quick example. If not once a week, twice a week, I'll get this call. I'll get a call. I'd like to talk to you about putting my kids on my deed. So I don't want the house to go through probate. Okay. All right. On the face of it, because somebody may have told them that you don't want to go through probate. Well, now I have to tell them. I said, okay, when did you buy your house? 1940. What'd you buy it for? $20,000. I look it up. So, okay, it's now worth $800,000. How many children you have? One. Okay. So do you realize that if you put that child on that house right now, when you pass away and they go to sell it, the value, or what's called a basis, for the house when calculating your capital gains tax is going to go all the way back to the $40,000 you bought it. So it's a $700,000 they sell it for minus $40,000, $640,000. I mean $660,000. You have $120,000 or $150,000 exemption. You're paying capital gains of about 20% on that $500,000 gone, just like that. Or what you can do is do a will. And in DC, they have transfer on death deeds also. You can do a will and just leave it to your son, or do a transfer on death deed. And upon your death, the value of it goes up to whatever it is when you die. And so if they sell it right then and there, there's no capital gains tax at all. So again, because of what they've heard in the community, it's not necessarily in their best interest. In some community, now that's DC is a place where that is a big problem because there's been such appreciation in real estate.
Yeah.
But if you're in other counties or some other parts of the country where property doesn't appreciate that much or as greatly, then yeah, it might be a good idea. Part of that is information and giving them the knowledge. Once they hear this, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I'll just. How much is the transfer on death deed? We can do that for a couple $100. So you mean to tell me just doing that, they're not going to pay that 20% tax? Yeah. Like, when do I write the check? So again, there's so many things that can make the lives of of individuals easier, so long as they have the information, they got the knowledge.
Yeah. So do you feel like you're walking your purpose? Would you call this your purpose? I don't know if that's the big word nowadays is purpose. Do you find your purpose? Do you feel like this is your purpose?
What I'm doing allows me to accomplish what I believe my purpose is. And if you go out, like on my personal Facebook page, there's something on there that says that the success in life is when you die to be able to know that you have made a difference in at least one person's life. And I think that this allows me to check that box, that somebody out there, through interacting with me and me providing services with them, would have had their life irrevocably changed for good because of our interaction. And that's always been, again, through the ALP.
Yeah.
It's the each one, teach one, each one, always remember there's somebody behind you. We would always eat in a buffet line. Everything we did was always buffet. And the rule was, remember there's someone behind you. Now you've been to buffets and you've seen people go to
don't take the big scoops, man.
The whole plate. They ain't looking at anybody behind them.
Exactly.
And get as much as I can.
Right.
What can I balance both of these plates? No, it was always remember there's somebody behind you.
Wow.
And what can you do to make that individual's life as good as yours or better? And so the short answer to that question is, I feel what I'm doing is allowing me to accomplish that purpose of making people's lives better.
That's awesome. And so did you always have a skill of public speaking when you said you used to do these presentations and stuff like that? Was that's something that you always had in you?
That was the ALP. That was it. Yeah. So, I mean, when I got to high school, I did theater. So that allowed me to know about, the ladies were in the theater, so I went to the theater.
You did football and theater. I know you had them on you, bro. I know you had them on you.
Let's be real. So I learned how to enunciate and project and do all that kind of stuff from the stage. So I learned that, but it was the ALP that really taught me and made me comfortable with public speaking, being able to get up and talk in front of folks. Accept the criticism, and to prepare for it, and to know how to read a room. You say something and you see someone's brow knit up. It's like, okay, keep talking a little bit and keep looking over there. Are they confused? Are they disagreeing with you? Do you need to elaborate a little bit more? Do you need to slow down? things along that line. It really that without a doubt came through the ALP.
Man, and you still enjoy to this day. Like, this is what you still enjoy doing.
Oh yeah. I mean, again, it's the knowledge, it's the education.
Yeah.
The ALP. You said something about opportunity and information.
Yeah.
The reason why that I always go back to Father Meehan and the ALP is because I didn't have to say yes. I was blessed with enough common sense that when they reached out their hand to say, we want you in this program, to say, okay. Because many of us go through lives and there are hands that are outstretched to us and we walk past it.
Yeah.
And we look back and say, damn, that was my opportunity. That was my opportunity, that if I had walked past that, oh man, there's no way that my life would be where I am today. I mean, it completely changed the trajectory of my life. It allowed me to see, it educated me and informed me about other opportunities. And so it's just one of those things where I have a very good friend of mine. He's from California, and we would talk about our program. His was a Omega Boys Club out in California. Mine was ALP, and we would always say they did the same exact thing. We're now brothers. He's, albeit he's a Q, but that's besides the point. I'm
still love you. Yeah.
But we are truly brothers, and kind of because we were going in different paths, and we got into ALP and him into the Boys Club, and it changed our futures. And we revere that organization, the people who led it, like they were our parents.
Man,
so
that's real. And for me, my opportunity was also in Brooklyn. It was this program called Legal Outreach.
Okay.
And that's literally all it was about, is exposing kids. The program started in like the 8th grade, exposing kids to the legal field. So we took like mock classes at Brooklyn Law School. They took us around to different law firms, different things like that. We had a mock trial. And we didn't know nothing about the law, but they just like threw us into it and said, here, see if this is what you like. And it stuck with me. So
there's a local program here. This same friend, his name's going to be busted now. His name is Judge Robert Rigsby, who started Law Camp. And it's working in the court and taking kids from different schools, primarily from Southeast, and bringing them to the court and introducing them to lawyers, engineers, the coroner, a whole bunch of different people. And then at the end of it, they end and teaching them about the law, but at the same time, and they do mock trial in Superior Court with real judges, with actual judges who critique them. And the most impressive thing is these kids are giving 5-minute openings and closing with no notes.
Go hard.
Go with your bad self. And they know what the objections are. They know the of evidence. But again, the intention is not to make them lawyers, like you said, but the intention was to give them access and opportunity to people in careers and positions that they'd never seen before. Again, taking what he learned from Omega Boys Camp and what I did from the ALP and infusing those in there. It started right when I was starting law school. So even as a student, I was going and doing camp because it was so very important.
That's so dope. So where do you see your firm and your practice in the next 5-10 years? What's the future looking like?
So 10 years from now, kissing 70. So what I always tell people is, I want to be able to do this as long as I want. I don't want to have to do it. So what I ultimately see, I was hoping my daughters would go to law school. One of them was interested until she saw me and she saw, Dad, those books are too thick. Yeah, those books. I still think there's hope for one of them though. But ultimately, I think the practice would be transferred over to someone else, and they would continue the practice, and I would just be, not of counsel, but the retired guy on the side who has the firm to be able to, if something comes up, I can help the client do it. So it's so in 10 years from now, it's not that I have to continue working. There's so many attorneys in their 60s and 70s, and hell, I know one who's in his 80s, who are still working because they have to. They didn't make the necessary right decisions and the finances and all this stuff. I pray that I'm not in that situation. If someone comes up and they have a issue, okay, I can help you with it. I choose to do so. Within 5 years, I just want us to continue or to be known even more as the estate planning firm. There's no population community we serve exclusively, but obviously our majority population is people of color. What I want to be known as, and the reputation is there already as an estate planning attorney. I want to continue to be known as an estate planning attorney, but also the attorney you have a relationship with. We track our clients, and so if they have kids, we track how old they are. So when they're about to turn 17, when they're about to turn 18, we contact the clients and say, hey, you got a kid who's about to turn an adult. And once they do, you no longer have access to their healthcare information or their financial information. So you may want to, if they're going to college, you may want to get to do power of attorneys and the HIPAA releases and all that kind of stuff. And so our clients come back to us and say, how did you know that? I said, you gave me a date of birth 3 years ago,
right.
5 years ago.
Wow.
So we use track it. And so that's the part when I talk about it's a relationship.
That shows investment. They feel connected with it because it sounds like you care.
Because again, I protected the parents, and I said I'm protecting you and your loved ones, and then I have the information there about their children, and yet their children navigate, and many of them are like, I had no idea about that. It didn't even cross their mind until I now tell them, and then they're like, wow, thank you, and they drag their kids in by their ear and said, we don't do that in that room, but get your plan done. We'll pay for it. Get your plan done. So
right, man. So I feel like it's the perfect way to segue into our final segment of the show called the closing argument, and it's basically you leaving the audience with words of wisdom, words of encouragement, something that they can take in from this podcast and go on with, and in closing argument form. So you have background in criminal defense, so I know you got some closing argument experience. You started with ladies and gentlemen of the jury, but you have to incorporate the word of the day. And the word of the day is resplendent. Resplendent.
Resplendent?
Yes. Resplendent. Resplendent.
Before I get started with that, so this is like this is the podcast version of Chopped. So it was like opening up the basket and you see, okay, have you ever seen the movie the show Chopped on Food Network?
No.
So it's a bunch of chefs that come in and they've got to make meals, but they don't know what they're going to be, what ingredients. And so they have these baskets and they have to open the baskets. It's like, oh wow, I've got to make dessert out of this.
You got some corn and right.
Broccoli and maple syrup and gummy bears. Go make a dessert.
Make breakfast. Go make breakfast.
Exactly. And so it's like they open up. So with you, it's like I'm waiting. Okay, what's the word? What's the word? Okay.
It's a good one.
So
I believe you.
I gotta even figure out the definition of resplendent. I think I know the definition. Can I phone a friend to look up for the definition?
You can't phone a friend. You can't know the definition. It's for you to use it the best way you can.
All right. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to do ladies and gentlemen a jury because this is not a criminal matter. However, this is a very serious matter. What we've been talking about is, you've used it, going back to your information and education. I mean, opportunity, information, education. And by the way, the two is not always the same. You can get a bunch of information, but not get educated from it. There's some things that are right. So not all information is opportunity. Right. Yeah. And so what I said earlier was everybody has an estate plan. Whether the state or the jurisdiction, the district has done it for you, or you create your own resplendent estate plan, which is customized to the way that you want it to be customized. The difference is if you use the state, they're just going to go cookie cutter model. You get to create your dynamic estate plan that has everything you want it to have. So when you get it, you're proud of it. You're looking at it and saying, okay, this is my plan, right? This is how I'm going to protect myself, and this is how I'm going to protect my loved ones. It is, and we give you a thick binder that, we tell people, don't bury somewhere, put it on the bookshelf. It says estate planning, so people know it's none of their daggone business to go look at it. Okay, it may look like a photo album, but it says estate plan. Because the reason why we tell people to not go hide it is because if it's needed, they need to be able to find out where it is. Okay, they need to be able to get it. We have to have access to it. So we give them a nice. I could use the word resplendent again, but a binder that's obvious. That it is their estate plan. So if the time becomes necessary, they know where to find it and how to use it. And so all I would say is, if you don't have your estate plan done, get it done. My website and a bunch of other websites out there have articles and blogs that are on there that you can learn from. It's critical that you learn and become knowledge and get yourself informed before you go get your estate plan. Don't just go in cold and don't go in blind. Get some education first and then go in and take advantage of the opportunities that are out there. And a final piece on that, if your estate planning attorney also advertises that they do criminal law, family law, mergers and acquisitions,
immigration,
don't go, because that is not a professional estate planning attorney. You want someone who that's their focus. If you break your leg, you don't want to go to an ophthalmologist. Okay. And if and vice versa, if you got a problem with your eye, you're not going to an orthopedic. Go to the lawyer who this is their practice. This is what they do.
Bread and butter.
Just make sure this is what their priorities are. And also, do they practice litigation? Estate planning litigation. My practice of estate planning litigation informs my ability to ask you questions and to prepare your documents so thoroughly and so well that it almost becomes litigation proof, because I've seen it happen on the other side, all the things that happen on the other side. So with closing, I would just say that estate planning being as important as it is, and the fact that you are important, but more important, your loved ones are important, right? You're not just doing it just to have the document. You're doing it to protect them. You're doing them to demonstrate your compassion and your consideration of them. Because when you get sick or when you pass away and they open up those documents and they realize that you have taken the time, some point in your life, to lay out these things for them, to ease their burden, there will be such a demonstration of love that they will be able to say, wow, thank you. I'm grateful that you did this, because they're not lost at that point. They can either put their wishes toward your health and recovery, or they can begin to continue the grieving and move on because you've put together the documents for them. So that's my closing argument, is for you to get it done and get it done by a professional.
Hey, amazing. Bob Newman, everybody, with the closing. You got the full TED Talk. You got the full layout. That was amazing. And you use the word correctly. Resplendent. It's attractive and impressive through being richly colorful or sumptuous. I don't know that one, but attractive and impressive. So create a resplendent estate plan.
So what's interesting is the binders are crimson red. Our colors are crimson and gray. And so the binders are actually crimson. So our clients get crimson binders. Again, so it doesn't get lost. And they're able to see that. So again, when you say attractive and being able to see it, it's there. It's crimson with the gold lettering and all that stuff. So they actually get their binders. So
that's a perfect word for you. I was kind of nervous, like, should I use this word? But no, this is perfect. This is the perfect word for you. No, man, this is great. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I learned a lot.
It is my pleasure.
Man.
And if I can ever do this again, I'll be happy to. It's just, you are making a difference. Earlier when we talked about information and education, this is how you do that. And so I appreciated the questions. You asked me things that I hadn't thought about in a while.
Good. It's the goal.
Earlier when we were talking about Ted Shaw, was that I could not remember his name to save my life. And then today, something happened, and I was watching CNN, and he came back to me.
Wow.
It was just like, he's truly one of those people
Yeah.
in the legal profession is just brilliant.
Yeah.
And but so self-effacing.
No, for real.
He'll make fun of himself in a heartbeat. But he's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and it's good to think back on the people who have impacted your life. And when life happens, it's human to forget or to lose you. But there's moments like these where you remember, like, no, this person did impact my life. So I'm glad I was able to be a part of that. And that's
you'll be on that list for me because this podcast will impact my my practice. As well as my ability to help clients. So I appreciate that. And so anything that I can do for you at any point in time, by all means, let me know.
Of course. And when you're ready to start your own podcast, let me know. Because I feel like, like you said, I feel like there's so much information that we didn't even touch on with estate planning that people need to know. And I would listen to an estate planning podcast where you just drop in gems every week. So let me know when you're ready. Because I think that's.
Hey, we all have mentors, so I might be taking you up on that.
Right, no, I got
definitely
you.
Taking you up on that.
No, I'll be hitting you up for a lot of information because your story alone inspired me for real. That was an amazing journey, and I'm glad I got to hear it.
The short information I had about you and your family, your dad, him doing. I mean, I went for my JD. Going for a PhD is no joke.
Yeah, no,
that's real. Both doctors, but that PhD is something else.
Yeah, you went hard.
Do it at that stage in life as well. Very impressed and proud of you, the support and your recognition. Or grateful of your recognition of his accomplishment. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for on the show.
My pleasure.
Yeah. All right. So